it's so amazing that when I ask people, like, what are you interested in? What do you do for fun? Yeah. And they'll say, I don't know. Or they'll only name like one thing. And I'm like, really?
Hi, I'm Lydia Thompson, and I'm the host of Counselor Off the Clock. I am honored to have you join me in my conversation with Kimberley Proctor-White while we talk about life balance. We answer some of the questions. How do we know our life is out of balance? What is something we can do to get back in balance? And why do I feel guilt in relaxing? If you are loving this podcast, subscribe. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Counselor Off the Clock. Kimberley is so much fun to talk to, so I hope you can get comfortable because we are off the clock. She's a counselor at Concord Family Counseling, the counseling practice that I own. I'm so thrilled to have her here. She is one of the most multi-talented and multifaceted clinicians that I have on staff.
That's sweet.
Well, I think it's obvious.
You know, when people pay a compliment, I'm like, it's after Christmas, so we don't have to like butter people up for gift giving. But thank you. I appreciate that.
No buttering you up. That's just true. That's facts. That's straight facts.
That. Thank you.
This podcast sponsored by, not actually, Southerners Coffee. It's the only way that I'm getting through right now. Right. And after having a baby is a little bit of coffee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say my drink is sponsored by the filter from my refrigerator. But if it wasn't filtered, it'd probably be Tennessee Tap. So I know.
Sponsored by Tennessee Tap.
Tennessee Tap.
Who knows what's in your water?
Right. That's why we don't do it.
Exactly. Well, our topic today is life balance. This is a topic that we often evaluate for when somebody comes into therapy, is how balanced is your life? Because some of your symptoms and some of your issues that you're coming in to work on in counseling might be coming from your life balance. Mm-hmm. And I think you're an excellent person to talk about this topic.
Thank you.
So before we get into the topic, though, I'm going to start with how I often start sessions. Instead of just asking, how are you? Because I get the, how are you? Good. And I'm like, how are you really?
Really?
So we're just going to skip the, how are you? Good. And just skip to, how are you really?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's nice outside. It's pretty. It's giving us that false glimpse of spring before spring really happens. So we're waiting for that second winter to happen, you know, and I'm kind of like, when will that happen?
Mouth.
And will it look like that first one we just had?
Oh my gosh.
So that's how I'm really doing. It's like I'm trying not to get deceived by the sunniness outside.
Yeah, we forget that like 3 weeks ago it was 8 degrees and a foot of snow.
Iced in. We couldn't get out of our subdivision.
I couldn't get down my hill. No.
Yeah, we have hills all throughout. So I'm like, okay, so here we are, you know, practicing that stuff I tell clients about radical acceptance. Can't do anything about it. So you just, you know, choose how you respond and keep it moving.
Exactly. I mean, there was nothing you could do about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now we get to enjoy this beautiful weather.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I'm going to enjoy it.
We're going to enjoy it. I'm going to
live in delusion. Right. That's totally fine.
I was going to say, what are you really up to, son? But yeah.
So is your mood often connected to the weather?
It depends, but I would say at least 80-85% of the time it can be. And definitely sometimes you have to force yourself to give the opposite. So like on those rainy, gloomy days, it is easy to want to sleep and feel blah, like it looks outside. So it depends on what's going on. I have to be intentional some days to say, okay, it's not as cute outside, but we're going to pretend like it's, you know, nice weather and we have something to do without worrying about getting wet. So yeah, psych yourself out however you can.
I have clients that love rainy days, and I know people do. I would call them not in touch with reality, but, you know, right. They're like, oh, they're so cozy to stay inside, and you know, I wish I had that perspective.
I like it at night, you know, because obviously we may not be going anywhere, but I love thunderstorms. In my vision of what I thought my future would be, you know, that movie Twister, and when they were chasing the tornadoes on the back of a truck and seeing the cow fly through the air, that is what I envision my future being. It's like, I want to be a storm chaser. Right. See, I still want to be, but then I'm like, no, maybe not. But yeah, like, so when it's thundering and lightning, I am that person that wants to be looking out the window at it to see what's happening.
Wow.
And could want to be outside too, but I know there's a danger in that, so I don't do that part as much. But yeah.
Yeah, so part of you wants to be outside chasing the storm.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But then the reality is like, we're here in Middle Tennessee and we know what has happened, and I don't want to be that flying person through the air, you know, like in the movie. So yeah, so you have to err on the side of caution, even though like in your brain you're like this daredevil.
Yeah. Yeah, balancing the like, I want to chase the storm, but also like I'm a mom and people depend on me and I don't want to die today.
Right. Yeah.
I've had a lot of weird sessions. Weird things happen and you have to just go with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're currently dealing with water damage over at the other office. This is why we're here today.
Yeah.
Then you just have to go with it. I had a session and the tornado sirens were going off.
Oh, wow.
And so me and my client and the mom of my client all went into the bathroom. And we had our session in the bathroom.
Wow.
In our tiny little bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know if I ever would have thought to continue the session. I think it would have been like, hey, we're just in here together in this awkward space. And it's like, you know, more or less like helping them stay calm or helping myself stay calm. But I don't know. Maybe I would have, but I don't know if that would have been my first thought. But
well,
that's
the topic of the session changed. I think you're exactly right. It was an opportunity for me. It was a little. So we got to practice regulation skills.
Yeah.
And we got to validate, you're scared. There's a threat. Like, I was like, I mean, I just have to use this, right? I can't just, there is no keep going.
Right.
With whatever topic that they came in with.
That's awesome.
What other option did I have?
I mean, what a way to set the tone for the rest of us. Because I'm like, I would have never, first of all, envisioned hunkering down in a bathroom with somebody, you know. But yeah, I mean, just trying to keep momentum. And, you know, I guess that could be a positive distraction if you want to, like, think of the silver lining in it. It's like, well, let's talk about why we were here originally. And then this just happened to be that extra bonus for the session.
It was a bonus. It was the fourth person was the storm in our session. I mean, and weird things come up. We're I mean, just like I've been trying to preach on this podcast, like, we're human and weird things are happening.
Absolutely.
So you have to just go with it and figure it out. There's the things that people came in with, and then there's the things that Mother Nature says you have to deal with.
Yeah. I applaud you for just kind of staying in the moment, because I would have been like, okay, who do I need to call? Who do I need to text? Make sure they're okay. And I think it would have been understood, and, you know, that if you have other people that you're responsible for. But yeah, that's amazing.
It was crazy.
You deserve an award for that. You do. That's why she's the owner, folks. Because she is doing things. She's raising the bar pretty high.
Oh my gosh. Hey, it's past December, okay? I can say the same to you.
Right. Well, this is true. I've never known anybody to say part of your training is like, do we move our sessions into a different spot, and how do we, you know, kind of make adjustments? So that should be part of like your new hire training. It's like, should you have to hunker down because of a storm, this is what you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need to figure that out. I was on an outdoor session and it started raining.
Yeah.
I mean, and like, what do? You have to just keep going. You got to just figure it out and figure out a way to use it therapeutically.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just funny. You just have to like laugh and go, you know, can't control everything, can you?
Yeah. I would say that happened to my husband. We were out, but I had to pull over so I could do a session in the car. So I asked him to step out of the car, and he took a book and he was reading at a picnic bench under a tree. Well, then the wind started picking up, and we, you know, it was about to start storming, and he just kind of kept eyeballing me through the window like, are you going to be done anytime soon? But thankfully nothing happened, but you could tell the wind was picking up and it was about to start raining. And I'm thinking he's under a tree and he's doing this so I could have a session. So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The things you do for people.
And you're like, okay, we still have 10 minutes left in session. You're going to get wet.
Yeah, but it didn't, so that was good.
Okay, that is good.
Yeah, the weather held off just for him.
Well, I want you to tell the listeners just a little bit about yourself. What's your style of therapy? Who do you work with? What do you love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always weird when people ask you to tell them about yourself because it's like, I don't know. I mean, I've lived with myself for quite a while, so I'm used to me. But yeah, I would definitely, I think you had mentioned about being multifaceted, and I think the older I get and the more life experience I have, I really do value all the different experiences that I've had. They haven't always been like the most glamorous or something that I would want to repeat, but you do try to find, okay, what was it that I learned in it? How did I grow? How did I make adjustments? So definitely trying to see the silver lining in those experiences. But yeah, I dabble in a lot of things,
You do dabble.
I do. I wear a lot of hats, kind of like that Cat in the Hat, that page in the book where he's got like layers of hats on top of him. And they're not balanced. They're kind of all over the place and wobbling, and that's how life can be. But yeah, I do things in music and acting and ministry. Outside of that, I love stuff like 80s trivia. I love board games. I like traveling and cooking. I'm a Pinterest person. So I was like, if I had thought of Pinterest, I would be a gazillionaire.
Did that thought cross your mind?
No, it never did.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm
You're
just
like,
saying,
what if?
If I had, it's like, what could I mean? Because a lot of the stuff that I see on there, I'm like, yeah, I've always loved doing that, and it's always like when you find your community of people that like to find hacks to do things,
Yeah.
and just creative stuff, as well as I do have well, they're not young now, but at the time, I was a Pinterest queen when my children were home. And I was a stay-at-home parent and just trying to find activities and things that they wouldn't, say no to as far as food, because kids are very picky.
Yeah.
So just trying to figure out, how do you educate them? How do you feed them? How do you keep them safe? And Pinterest came to the rescue every single time. Shout out to Pinterest, whomever owns that.
This
If they need me as a
this
spokesperson.
podcast sponsored by Pinterest.
Right. Like, if they ever need me to do like any kind
Yeah.
of sponsored stuff, I would do that.
You hear that, Pinterest?
I need to reach out to them. I
Wow.
think that's going to be my goal for this year. Be like, I don't know where that's going to go.
Pinterest was the shit.
But yeah.
I mean, there was a time when Pinterest, the hacks, and this is where, especially for women, where we were able to find hacks for the house and the kids and the activities and the fashion, and it all lived there. I don't really know many people, except for my husband, who uses Pinterest.
Oh, so it's kind of fading? I'm behind the times?
No. I mean, women.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I don't use. Maybe I wasn't clear. I don't hear of many men, except for my husband, using Pinterest. I think it's a very female website.
Yeah. That's why I need to be a spokesperson.
This is why I know.
I have lived experience with Pinterest, and definitely, and my husband teases me, like if I make a new meal or I do something, creative, like even how to hang scarves on a clothes hanger or something.
Yeah.
And so he'd be like, "You got this off Pinterest, didn't you?" I was like, "Absolutely." Absolutely. And you like it, don't you? So,
we pride ourselves on being lifelong learners, and it seems like Pinterest is helping you continue to hack your life.
Yeah. I mean, I get actually a lot of even therapy stuff from Pinterest. Like if let's say it starts out with Google. Okay, shout out to Google. We're going to give shout outs to everybody today. Because
we're grateful.
It takes a village,
Yeah.
But seriously, like sometimes if I'm working with a client and we're either on a topic or I'm trying to brainstorm where to go with this client, maybe I feel stuck. And so I will Google different things, and of course it'll give you like a variety of things, but Pinterest tends to pop up a lot, whether it's therapy worksheets, and I have several different websites that I use for therapy worksheets. But Pinterest will pop up, like any kind of visuals, and I'm a visual person, so I think that's why I like that as well, because in working with young clients, sometimes talk therapy isn't really their thing. So it's like, how can I give you something visual that helps you make a better connection? Or how can I give you something in the moment that we can work on? Because I know that probably once you leave this office, you're not going to think about anything we said until we see each other again. Yeah. So I'm trying to make something stick while I have that 50 minutes with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, doing your best. And I think people don't understand the work that goes on outside of session, that we think about our clients, we care about our clients, and we do research in order to best help our clients, whether that is Pinterest or Google or wherever. We're trying to just help our clients.
Yeah, or help yourself,
Help yourself.
I mean, kind of feel a little bit more confident in some areas, especially if, there's been a wrench thrown in there and you're like, I mean, I've heard about that, but I'm not really sure how to approach it, or, so it definitely comes in handy of just kind of finding different creative outlets to connect with people.
Yeah. So how do you think, like, all your cat in the hat hats influence who you are as a clinician?
The main way I would say that helps is because from my experience, I mean, it would be great to hear from the other side of the people that I connect with, but I feel like it helps me connect with people, where I think a lot of times people always think about what we don't have in common versus what we do have in common, or there's so many barriers, there's age gaps and educational barriers. And so sometimes it is really refreshing to know that regardless of what background we come from, there may be that one or two things that we agree on. Like, it could be a TV show, it could be a song, a favorite artist, it could be a book, and I think it's always been helpful to be very well-rounded. So as a singer, that was one of the things that was instilled in me, is like, you be well-rounded, so that way you can fit in any kind of setting. So I do that in all areas. I try to make sure I'm learning new things and talking with different people and getting their experiences. And so my life experiences has allowed me to really connect with people that maybe thought we wouldn't have a lot in common, as well as the fact it helps you, again, continue to be a lifelong learner, to know that you have more to grow always.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you're exactly right. Some people show up in our offices and it's like, what do we have in common? So, like, I'm a man and you're a woman. Okay, so what do we have in common? Right. And really, our job is, within the first session, is to find some things that we have in common just as people. Yeah. And sometimes that can help people make them feel more comfortable. Yeah. As much as they're coming here for your expertise, they're also coming here to connect with another person.
Sure, yeah. So. And I think that also makes it, kind of my role in reminding them that they're also in a position to teach me. So I, try to make sure they know that we can both benefit from our time together, not just them coming to me.
Yeah. So what are some things that you hear about or learn from your clients?
Oh,
like, you can add another hat.
Yeah.
Mine is anime shows. I know too much about anime shows and video games. I know a lot about video games just based off of the demographic I work with. And people might be surprised at how much we talk about TV, movies, and video games. But I care about what my clients care about. Yeah. And so now I know a lot. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. So I'm not as knowledgeable yet, but I'm starting the process of doing research on, like, Dungeons and Dragons.
Amazing.
Because that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, what is this? I hear it. I've seen that. There's a movie that came out. I guess last year. And so I was like, okay, let me figure out what the hype is about D&D, because everybody either brings that up or, even Snapchat. We know that this is a social media era, and it's more than just Facebook and Instagram and stuff, but even knowing that Twitter changed its name, those are things that when I heard it, I was like, well, what happened to Twitter? There's like, oh, Twitter still exists, but now it's called something else. I think it's called X.
Yep.
But yeah, so
X.
So Snapchat comes up quite a bit, and so I will ask my clients, well, tell me like your experience of it, and what is it that makes a person want to get into it? And to me, it sounds like it's just kind of like a glamorized text messaging service. That's what I've gathered, but that's why I said, let me do my own research. So I had downloaded it, and I was like, yeah, I mean,
Kimberly, I don't know if I can say this. You're aging yourself.
Oh, yeah. I know I am. Oh, I could really age myself. My husband and I met on MySpace. For those of you that don't know, y'all Google that. So... So yes, I know.
You guys met on MySpace.
We met on MySpace.
Do you want to share that story on the pod?
Oh, sure. I have no problem. I love sharing that story because it really is like being in a time warp. Because people's like, well, what's MySpace? It predates Facebook.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cool thing about it was, when people had MySpace accounts, you could create your own playlist and your own graphics. So it was almost like this PowerPoint presentation, so that when anybody came to your page, they could see all of the work you put into it, and you'd have these songs that would just pop up. And so we had a mutual friend, and I approached him, which is a bit non-traditional for a lot of people, but he had a really nice photo and a nice smile in the photo. And so I was not looking for any kind of boyfriend or long distance relationship, but I just was like, hey, I'm just trying to meet new friends. And we just kind of chatted it up for a while. We lived in different states and did long distance dating for at least about 4 years.
Wow.
We laugh about the fact that the first time we met, I brought a friend to me to meet in our public setting. He didn't. So we laugh about it because he's like, well, you saw I came by myself. He was like, how'd I know you weren't crazy? I was like, well, you're the one who didn't value your life and bring a backup bodyguard. I did. So anyway, we laugh about that. But yeah, 12 years later, we're still here. And
wow.
Yeah.
You can meet anybody anywhere. I would say it's a miracle wherever you meet somebody, whether it's in a bar or at a church or on an app or on MySpace or you see them in the grocery store. It's a miracle. Anybody finds anybody nowadays.
Yeah. And you just, it's just kind of like when you're not looking, that's kind of when it happens. And that's usually when they find you, like you're in sweaty gym clothes in the produce section at Kroger, and it's like, why today? Because you think in your mind you have to look a certain way and be a certain way. But yeah, that's our how I met your mother and your father story.
Oh my gosh. So I do want to get into our topic today, which is life balance. So do you have a spiel that you give in session to your clients about life balance?
Well, I do try to encourage it, and when I guess it depends on the person, because with my younger clients, it's kind of hard, because I don't think they see the value in it right now, and I probably didn't when I was middle school and high school either. Those are things that I learned much later in life, post-college, and really maybe even in grad school or even after that, because those are one of the things they drilled in us in our counseling program about self-care and making sure that you have all these different outlets. But it was almost like feeling guilty or feeling like you had to have permission to do it. So I don't have that conversation with my teens as much. I do talk about it every now and then because in my mind, I'm thinking most of the adults that have challenges and deal with things is because they didn't learn the concepts when they were younger. And so that's one of the reasons I'm drawn to younger clients, is because I'm trying to create healthy, functioning adults in some ways. And so with my adult clients, they are definitely in need of that conversation. And it's more like, okay, what are you doing for yourself? How often are you doing it? They're like, oh yeah, I go to the gym. Well, how often? Well, it might be, once every other month. And it's like, okay, if that works for you, that's one thing. But if you're wanting to do more, if you're trying to be a better version of yourself, you have to do that more regularly. So for them, it's always just not having time to do it, or they're feeling guilty for doing it. And so I'm trying to get them to the point of consistency as well as being unapologetic about doing it.
Yeah, I think something that you said, guilt, is something that's often comes up as an obstacle to getting to life balance. I think everybody, like even listening to this, or all of our clients, we can all agree. It's a common concept, like we want life balance. But when we really dig into it, it's a lot harder to achieve.
It is.
So can you speak to that guilt piece of what you see in terms of that being an obstacle for people?
Yes. So I'm probably not the only woman who has ever said, it would be nice to be a man for a day.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like at some point we all kind of have that thought, or we say it aloud, and I would love to see what it's like to be a man for the day.
Okay, tell me about what do you mean by that?
Well, they get to walk around without their shirt on. No, I'm just kidding. But well, there's that part too, for summertime. But no, seriously, I feel like a lot of the stuff that we worry about and that we stress over, I'm always wondering, like, what do men even worry about that? And if they do, they don't show it in an outward way like we do. I think when we are stressed and we're overwhelmed, like you can see it externally a lot. And unfortunately, men haven't always had that permission or that space to openly talk about things. So I would never say they're not stressing, or they're stressing more of the financial piece, being the breadwinner, or whatever that role is that they have. But the little everyday things, I'm just always curious about, do you ever worry about this? And if you do, how come I don't see it? How come you don't talk about it?
So plenty of men do deal with life balance issues, but the piece of guilt you see tends to come from the women or girls you work with.
Yeah.
So can you help the listeners identify what that might look like or sound like if guilt is an obstacle?
Yeah. So I think a lot of that has to come with understanding how many people were raised and how society has just drilled into our brains about traditional roles. And I think that's what's kind of helped me find my own life balance, is because I had to relearn some things and say, yeah, this might have been appropriate at the time, or this is what was accepted, but it doesn't make that right. And I think, unfortunately, people kind of still carry those roles of, women have to be the caregivers, and we have to be the nurturers. We have to be the ones who are the superheroes that even when our own wings have trouble flying, we have to swoop in and take care of everyone else. And so that guilt is because there's this expectation, either from society or the people around us. And I find that a lot of the things that I thought that I needed to do wasn't because somebody told me directly. It was just a perception. It's like, well, it's perceived to be that this is what I'm expected to do, but no one ever said, well, Kimberly, you have to do that, or you can't do this. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, am I not considered, a good mom or a good wife or a good daughter or whatever if I don't do these things? So that's where that guilt comes in, is our perceptions, or maybe what people have said or not said to us directly. Maybe the expectations we have of ourselves. We can compare ourselves to other people, and we're like, am I doing enough in compare to somebody else we're seeing, so that's been my experience of guilt. Someone else's might look completely different.
Yeah, so there could be expectations that if you give time for just you, you are now taking time away from your job, your kids, your husband, your community. You could be doing something else for other people. But as a mom, there's always people that need you. And so to take time away, I hear this all the time, is selfish.
Yep. I've heard it before.
Can you speak to that taking time for yourself is selfish?
Again, no one's ever said it to me directly.
I know, neither have I, but somehow it gets in there.
I've heard it said of other people, but no one has ever said it directly to me.
Okay.
But, God forbid if I want to take a nap in the middle of the day, I'm kind of like, going through the rabbit hole of I should be doing this and I see this needs to be done. And, so not even allowing yourself to rest when you need to. That guilt can be really strong, as well as there would be times that I would just be resting and my husband, and even if I had a full day of doing a bunch of things, cleaning or working, I could be laying or sitting on a chair or something, and I could hear my husband coming in, and I'll get up real quick and go do something, right? Not because of anything he's ever said or expected of me, but it's almost like there's this misconception that if you're laying or sitting or resting, you're being lazy or you're lacking motivation, or again, I could be doing all these other things, not taking into account what you've already done.
Yeah. Like really downplaying what you're doing. Yeah, and I'm kind of with you. It's like those messages may not even be directly said, but somehow it gets woven into who you are and how you operate. So how do you think that actually, or what do you see that playing out? What does that do when people don't take time for themselves? That's often where we see the imbalance, right? We don't see the imbalance in like, hey, you need to work more,
right?
Not as often. Yeah. With some people, but often there is overwork and under rest or under play. So what do you think that does to a person from your lived experience or just your clinical experience? What does that do?
Yeah, I think it kind of, as I tell a lot of my clients, when we ignore things and we don't address things, then we're creating, stuff that's going to eventually make this volcano erupt. We're stuffing it down and, eventually it explodes. And, when you see volcanoes and the lava comes out, everything around it burns, it gets destroyed, and so I think it's kind of the same thing, when we don't address that we're tired, we're running on fumes, we feel stressed out, we feel overwhelmed, maybe people don't feel like they have support and they're having to do everything, then it's almost like at some point you're going to crash and burn.
Right.
And God forbid anybody sees that, because then there's this either, again, people say it directly or indirectly, oh my God, I thought you were so strong and you always you never are crying and you're always smiling.
You can handle so much.
And that's why when that quote or that meme was circulating for a couple of years of check on your strong friends, it makes so much sense, because people perceive you as the person who has it all together. And then when you fall apart, they don't know what to do with that, because there's like, I've never seen you like this.
I relate, yeah.
And so, but then it also is your own personal responsibility, because maybe we've never allowed people to see us in our brokenness or to see us when we, have a need, because we feel like we have to be, put together.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something important. It's important to take responsibility for your own life balance. I often find myself looking for permission from others to rest or to have more balance in my life. And really, it's my responsibility to set those expectations for others. Yeah. And that expectation for myself, and fight for that life balance. Yeah. And then I also hear, if you... we were talking on the last episode of the podcast about seeing patterns in your life, and that's often where the work is. And so if you're seeing patterns of build up, explode, build up, explode, life balance might be an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's going to come out somewhere. There is no, I'm going to live an imbalanced life and there's not going to be any side effects.
Yeah.
It's going to come out somewhere.
Right. And even when you're talking about finding those patterns, sometimes the patterns aren't just you and what you're doing, but these could be things that were modeled from the people around us.
Absolutely,
so if you again, men and women, you might have seen your parents who were constantly working and they didn't have the resources that we do today. They didn't have that option to have help in the ways that they probably could have really used it, so they had to do whatever they had to do. And so there's some great work ethics and great gratitude that comes with that, but then there's also that part of it might not have been the best thing to learn to generationally hand down, because they couldn't ask for help, or they didn't feel like they could, had permission. And so unfortunately we can learn those same concepts. Absolutely. Even though we have more access to resources than maybe they did.
Yeah, this can be passed down, and often the people who lived an imbalanced life and carried a lot of the work were praised. And so what that models for us is, this is a behavior I can do that gets praised, gets validation, gets attention. And sometimes we didn't see those side effects from other people. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. This is not just you're bad for having a life imbalance. Let's discover where this has come from and how we've gotten so imbalanced.
Yeah. And I think now, because we're in a society that really does openly talk about mental health, even though individuals are still feeling comfortable, but as a society, we've normalized talking about it. And so again, those prior generations didn't openly talk about that. And if they did, it was kind of watered down or sugar coated and say, oh, well, that's just how Uncle Johnny is, or that's how, Aunt Susie.
He just needs his nerve pills.
Right. He
just needs a drink.
He's just a drinker. It was like, no, there's something a little bit more than just that. Why is he drinking? And so I think that's another part, is because now we're more aware of how mental health can take a toll on your life. And we're hopefully, again, getting more and more comfortable about doing something about it, rather than having to ignore it like people, 50, 60 years ago did.
Yeah. There is no ignoring it anymore. Yeah. It's in your face, especially with the pandemic. Oh my gosh, we can't even get into it. But especially with the pandemic, I think it highlighted for a lot of people, oh my gosh, I don't have hobbies. I don't have life balance. So what would you say to a person who is identifying with this and goes, okay, I know my life is imbalanced. I'm working too much. I'm not playing enough. I'm not resting enough, or I feel imbalanced in some way. What's one thing they could do today, right, this week, to integrate more rest, and one thing they could do to integrate more play into their life?
Yeah. So part of that is I have to understand that maybe what I think they should do could be one thing, and they could think the complete opposite. So they have to find what works for them. And maybe the ways in which I carve that time out for myself is not something they want to do. So I typically will tell clients, after I've had that conversation about what are you currently doing? What do you wish you had more time to do? If it wasn't about time, what would you be doing, like, even this week, Yeah. Because a lot of times people are always like, oh, I want to travel. Well, is that something you can do this week? Probably not. Yeah, right? No. So realistically, what can you do today? What can you do this week? And so we might, say, okay, can you carve out 10 minutes to just sit and do nothing? Oh, now, when
that
you
tell, a challenge,
though. They don't like it when I say that.
That's a big challenge. You would think 10 minutes, don't do anything, but that's... I think that could be a real challenge, and not to get too therapist-y here, but notice what comes up. Sit for 10 minutes, and then what do you notice? What thoughts come into your head? What feelings come into your body? Do you feel rushed? Do you feel anxious? Is your mind racing? And that can give you a lot of information. Now, we always encourage people to be working with a counselor, and a counselor can help you come up with those goals based off of what does work for you. Right.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times it could be also that they don't want to do it because they don't have any ideas. So I usually try to keep a lot of different things bookmarked on my laptop, so that I'm like, okay, if it has to do with coping
Pinterest.
Skills, Pinterest. Oh, I got a
Create
whole
your
board.
Pinterest board.
I have a whole board, y'all, and it's not just one board. It is several boards based on, is it outdoor decor? Is it food? Is it meal planning? Is it therapy? And so even my bookmarks and stuff that I have on my computer, it might have a list of things. And then there are times when I will go through the list of things with my clients, especially with my younger ones. If it's so amazing that when I ask people, like, what are you interested in? What do you do for fun? And they'll say, I don't know. Or they'll only name like one thing. And I'm like, really? So there's this list. I think it's called like 100 hobbies for teens or something.
Whoa.
And
We'll
so,
link it in the show notes.
yeah. So I go through it and I've like kind of trimmed it down because I'm like, I'm probably sure they don't want to do like this particular thing that's on here. But
stamps.
Yeah, like stamp collecting. But there are some young people that might like that.
Let us
But
know in
we'll
the
go
comments.
through it, and you would think, okay, 100 things that might take forever, but it really doesn't. Like maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and I'll just go through the list, and it's from arts and crafts to even videography, blogs, volunteering, learning a new dance, playing a video game. Like it just has all these different categories, and I always kind of bring it back up to the client. I say, when I asked you, you only said one or two things, but we just named like 20 things. And they were like, wow. And I was like, exactly. So sometimes I think the reason it's hard for people to find things to do is because they don't know where to start. So again, we have the internet at our fingertips. You don't have to go to the library. Again, this is aging me, but you don't have to go to the library and check out books and look through the Rolodex and all that stuff. Everything is accessible on a phone or a computer. And, if you want to look at things that are happening in your city, things that are happening, in your state, or if you are trying to travel, go ahead and plan ahead of some things you might want to do. So, but just starting with that initial, like, can we get 10 minutes in? Is there an opportunity for me to go to my favorite store and just walk around, not have an agenda, but just walk around?
Not for a purpose, not to buy anything, not to run an errand,
right?
But just to have space for yourself. I think you're right. Even creating 10 minutes just to search. To go, hey, what could interest me? Eve Rodsky writes this book called Unicorn Space. She also wrote the book Fair Play. And I think it's an excellent book, period. End of sentence. But it's a really great book for mothers and women. Unicorn Space, how she's defined it, is a space that is not for work or family or anybody else. It is just space for you. She said it much more eloquently than I just did. But it's a space that's just for you, and it's not for money. And the purpose is just to have fun and do things that interest you.
Right.
And I encourage my clients to find a space that's just for them, that is just for their own enjoyment.
Yeah.
I
think it's good to have like your own thing. And another thing that I do mention to my clients, when we talk about these roles that we have, I had to learn this myself, that it doesn't make you any less loving. Doesn't mean that you're not a good person or that you don't care about people because you want to take care of yourself. But I was like, it's okay for you to just find you. So I had to find just Kimberly, not mom, wife, all the other roles, those titles. The title of Kimberly was put on the back burner. Because I gave so much time and energy into the other things. And so when I rediscovered her, it was like, oh yeah, she always liked these things. And not that I ever stopped doing things. It was just, I wouldn't do it as regularly as I could have been doing, or I would turn down opportunities because I was like, well, I got to do this, or, when my children were younger, I need to be at home and stuff. So even with my friends who have recently had babies, and, maybe their kids are less than 3 years old, I will remind them, I was like, it's okay to go out with your friends and, have dinner, or it's okay for you to go and take that class that you want to take. If you want to go do like some kind of sewing circle at the, at the community, I don't know, it's okay for you to do that.
I'm absorbing this message because I think I am in that stage of life. And this is an area that I do struggle with because I love my job and I love my family, and carving out interests is hard.
It is.
And so because being a practice owner and being a mom, period, is so time consuming.
It is, yeah. And you'll find your thing, eventually if that's what you want, know, because it is about like how bad do you want it, you know. And again, there are sacrifices that you have to make as a parent, or when you're a business owner, or when you're trying to go to school and you're trying to, better yourself in any way. We know there's sacrifices in anything that we do, but at what cost? That's what it always comes back to,
And I notice if I don't have time for myself and don't have time for myself, I think you're exactly right. Like, it catches up to me. And the goal for me is always to identify that way before I am at my complete limit. Yeah. And I go, I need to take to myself.
Right.
Yeah. I just need everything to stop. Right. Is to keep life balance going and keep that in check consistently. So that anytime I veer off course, I can course correct.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it took me 5 years to get there, and I don't want it to be 5 years.
Lifetime goal.
But I mean, ultimately, it did take about 5 years before I really kind of evaluated what was missing. And again, in order for you to be, I don't even want to say successful, but in order for you to do all those different things well, you do have to take time out for yourself, as they always say, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And that's pretty much what a lot of us are doing, not just women, but men, and sometimes even some of these young clients that I'm working with. I'm like, how you're making me exhausted talking about your schedule. And so I'm trying to, again, help them learn skills now so that by the time they get in college, because college is rough, and college has no time limits when it comes to things, because you can sleep when you want to, eat when you want to, within reason. Classes might have the most structure because you have to go to class at a certain time. But otherwise, everything really is about you just doing whatever, whenever. And if you don't learn the necessary skills when you're younger, it'll stay with you for a while. And then for those of us that are already adults and we feel like we've already kind of, that ship has sailed, it's not too late to kind of relearn some things, set new boundaries, and rediscover you as the individual, not your role.
Love it. So if people have been tuning in and they've been listening and we've just kept them company while they're cleaning and driving and running or whatever they're doing, listening to this, what is one takeaway that they could, not even pay attention for the last however many minutes? What's the one takeaway from today?
The one takeaway is make yourself a priority.
I love it.
Period. Yeah, make yourself a priority. And whatever that means, it might not look like someone else's, but you have to make yourself a priority.
Great. As always, this is not medical advice, but please talk to a counselor. We're here to help you. We're on your side. And if you do find yourself struggling with life balance, if you're really connecting with what we've been talking about, I would really encourage you to see a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist, somebody who is outside of your system who can really help you evaluate and help you prioritize you. This was Counselor Off the Clock. I am so thrilled that if you stuck around to the very end to get this takeaway. So apparently in Spotify, you can leave us a voice memo, and we're happy to answer any questions that you guys have. If not, like, subscribe, comment, share. We're so excited to be able to have these topics for you guys. Until next time, we are Counselor Off the Clock.